like I said, more than just the paper CVs, I'd really like to get to know each of you better, as I'm sure our audience would as well. So just a few opening remarks around who are you and what has your journey been as a scientist, as an engineer, the STEM professional, from getting you into the industry, what made you study what you studied, the journey getting into industry, and a little bit to where you are today. A short time, no doubt, so just a high-level summary, and we'll dig deeper soon. Perhaps start with you, Tessie.
Okay. An engineer by education and scientist by profession. I did my BTech in electrical and electronics engineering from Trichur Engineering College, then did master's ME in specialization in missile technology, and then doctorate in the same field. And as a major role, as a responsibility of a project leader and a director of the DRDO lab, we have a lot of interaction with more than 800 industries and academia participations to have the work of this scientific research to go ahead for our country's defense needs.
Pleasure to be here with you, Dr. Tessa. Well, I would like to tell a very inspiring story on how I got into science and technology, but I don't have an inspiring story. I'm from Hyderabad. I grew up here. I come from a middle-class family, and when we were growing up, the thing that matters most in a middle-class family is for you to study. The education is the only way you get up your ladder. And so my mom, who is here in the audience today, and my dad, who is up there, they valued education a lot, and they said, that's the way to go up. And so everybody around me was studying engineering and doing math, and so I just followed the crowd, and I went and studied engineering, and got a degree in electronics and communication. And after that, again, I followed the crowd. Everybody was going to the United States to study. And so I went there. I did my master's in computer science, and I started working at IBM. And about 5 years down the lane, I thought, I would like to really understand the business side of things. So I went to New York University, got a business degree in the Stern School of Business at New York University. And I continued to work at IBM. So, I wish I had a more inspiring story to tell, but it's a very traditional, conventional story of a middle-class family girl who just went through the traditional path of getting educated and going into engineering field, because that's what feeds you and that's what feeds your family.
I actually think those are more the stories we need to tell. I would love to get to a time in a day where it's not inspiring for a girl to study STEM. It's normal. It's the thing that a girl just does. For a girl to be an engineer is an everyday event. So I'm all for inspiring, and I'm sure I do beg to differ, though, because I know a little bit more about your story, and I do think the work that both of you have done is quite inspiring. But to your point, there needs to come a time where, so I'm an engineer. I'm not a women engineer. I'm an engineer, and that's normal.
And in fact, to that point, I'd like to add, in the engineering college that I studied, there were 18 girls and 18 boys in our class.
Really?
And I know that's kind of unusual, but actually in India, that's a lot more. In India and in middle-class families, and when you look at upper-class families, it's very common for girls to go get educated, because that's what you do. The problem really lies in the lower strata of the society, right? So in fact, having lived in the United States for more than 20 years, actually it's much harder for people in the United States, the girls growing up in the United States, to pursue engineering careers, because they have so much choice and so many other things that they could go into. And there is not that much of a culture of becoming an engineer or a doctor. It's not like how our parents tell us that you either have to be a doctor or an engineer. That's kind of how it is in middle-class families in India. That's not how it is in other parts of the world. So in some ways, although there is this perception that there are not that many educated girls in India, I beg to differ, because I think that, again, in some strata of the societies, obviously not everywhere, girls just get educated. That's part of very normal routine, like how you are, talking about it.
So you mentioned the word perceptions, and we're certainly going to dig deeper into the numbers a bit later, but oftentimes we say when girls, and I think girls and boys alike, but more so girls, why they don't study engineering initially is because they don't really understand, if we watch TV and the role that media plays. So you want to become a doctor, you watch Grey's Anatomy or Scrubs. Lawyers, you got Boston Legal, and it looks really, really sexy to, be in that industry, or a Wall Street banker. Up until very recently in industry, what do engineers have? What do STEM professionals have? We have Wallowitz, right, from Big Bang Theory. It doesn't look as attractive. And because of that, oftentimes it's not really understood what is the day in the life of an engineer or a scientist. What does that look like? So if you were speaking to, I know when I studied engineering, I got into it for all the wrong reasons, but that's a conversation for a different day. If you had to speak to somebody and that, not the Google definition of what is an engineer, what is a scientist. So let's start with you, because I think when you think about the defense industry, again, it sounds really exciting and cutting edge, state of the art, it has to be. What is a typical day in the life of a scientist like yourself working in that industry?
Yeah, it's to do with technologies, first time development, first time design and development. So it has a lot of uncertainties, risk involved in the development of science. And it's not, a scientist's job cannot be defined as a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. job. A total involvement and commitment of the scientist is required. And sometimes we work to a level that the scientist has to continue the experiment or the research work maybe beyond the office hours. And that challenge to meet the family as well as the home friend and the work together, adjusting to this scientific environment and challenges, there has to be a balance. One has to, as an individual, has to express. So this is one thing wherein which the women face difficulties. So to have a balance between that, of course, the responsibilities, the woman is passionate, the woman is committed, woman is dedicated. When it comes to the right part, the intelligence part, the woman is still one step ahead. But when it comes to the emotional intelligence, wherein which a person has to respond to one's own feeling and others and the environment simultaneously and respond, that is where one gets stuck. And definitely in this, being this spirit of doing the science and engineering, people strive, and that is how one comes up in this field.
Great. We're definitely going to talk about work-life balance as well, but because I do think it's a different conversation when you're talking about women in STEM, versus women in the general workplace. But I'm going to park that for a minute because, sticking with perceptions, and I love, Rama, that you work for IBM in the role of an engineer, and we'll talk about the day in the life of your work, because often when one thinks of an engineer, so I worked in the petrochemical space for a long time, and it was that typical picture of a grease monkey in a hard hat and overall. And when girls think about that as the picture of an engineer, they're like, why would I want to do that? You're sitting on site, you're doing night shift, it's a really physically harsh environment oftentimes. However, there's another part of engineering that we don't speak about. And I would love to know, in your world of engineering, working for a tech company like IBM, what is a typical, if you were speaking to a young girl and telling them what an engineer does in your world, what does that look like?
Well, what an engineer does, engineer builds things, right? That's the starting point. And there are many kinds of engineers: mechanical engineer, civil engineer, computer science engineer, and so on. I'm a computer engineer, so I'm sitting in front of a computer most of the day, if I'm not meeting with team members, discussing things, and trying to build something. I mean, I used to do a lot more of that. These days, I'm trying to figure out what to build, and get my team to build that, what needs to be built. Day in the life of an engineer, is about having the passion for what you are building and have the vision for what does the end product look like, right? If I'm writing a piece of software, I need to have a vision for, what a perfect piece of software would look like when it runs without any defects. And I have to be able to visualize that and design it. So that's really important, to have the goal and the end vision in mind. That helps you really kind of think through what is it that you have to do to get to it. Somebody once told me, if you're cooking, the best way to not have a burnt dish is to visualize how the dish would look at the end of the cooking process. And once you visualize what it's supposed to look like, that cabbage is not supposed to be brown and burnt. You visualize that, and that's when you put a lot of focus and you're looking at the dish while you're cooking. Same thing I would say for an engineer. You have to have the vision in mind and think about it and design it accordingly. And there will be a lot of problems along the way. I mean, there will be defects, there will be problems, data issues and how it runs, and things don't work. And but at the end of the day, if you have that passion to stick to that and stay the course, and that you can build that end product, you'll get there. So I would say for an engineer, it's a lot about getting your hands dirty, building the things, visualizing it, designing it, iterating over it, and working with the teams to build it collectively and getting it done.
So you see, and this is sort of where I'm going. If you had to speak to a young girl about in describing an engineer like that, using the analogy of cooking and the like, we start having a different conversation. You're not just someone who's switching on a pump and churning oil. There's the day in the life of an engineer, a scientist, as a STEM professional. It's around information. We claim to be living in the information age where information is readily available at the click of a finger. But Google is only as powerful as the question you put into it. If these girls aren't even asking about STEM, about engineering, about being a scientist, where are they getting the answers from? So we need to start telling these stories a lot more. Tessa, you spoke a little bit about the work-life balance. So often when, in the workplace, there's a global conversation going on around getting more women in the workplace, and especially at senior levels. And when work-life balance comes up, things like remote working hours, flexible, working from home, virtual working come up. How different is it? And you mentioned when you talked about your day. Is it or is it not true in your experience? So in the STEM industry, is it that clear-cut? Can an engineer who does need to be on site work virtually? To your point, even from the science field and what you're doing, is it as simple as flexible working hours?
It may not suit to the flexible working hours. Maybe the time period when a woman needs a gap to take care of the home part and re-enter back into the technology. We can promote the women by giving training or whatever she has missed out in the period of home nurturing. So that is the time, that is a short period as far as scientist life is concerned. As a scientist, when we start working on the technology and the know-how of the technology, a person has to be identified, the skill of the person has to be developed. You give an expertise, you give a guidance, the potential in a scientist comes up, and then you tap the knowledge of that person, interact with everybody, you develop, you grow as a scientist. That is what is required in this profession, and most of our women scientists are competing with that at par. And today we have in DRDO, we have a huge amount of scientists in the senior positions, leading as technology directors, as project directors, and director general in the specific aerospace clusters. These are examples of people striving their best to do their work with dedication, discipline, and determination. This is what is the three key factors which is required for a scientist to come up in life.
Thank you. Because, Rama, you spoke about, in a different context, you spoke with your parents are here today, and I think it's always amazing when the role that parents play in our journeys. So both of you, if you could share, because it ties to the work-life balance, right? As women, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, we often have to choose between being a good mother or being a good professional, a STEM professional. And one, it's the work-life balance examples that you brought into how do you try to do both of them, and how do companies, the whole industry and the companies actually have to play in that. But from a personal perspective, and I want to address it from both angles, what has been the role of your parents in helping you and walking you through this journey, and you as parents, what are the conversations that you're having with your sons and daughters around the gender parity conversation for women in STEM? And maybe we can start with you, Rama, with the role that your parents have played in your journey, and now with you as a parent.
Well, that's huge. Obviously, I mean, without the guidance and the love and affection of parents, we won't be who we are today. And I had the pleasure and luxury of growing up in a middle class family with all the values that you need to carry on for the rest of your life, taught by my mom and dad. And when we live in a different country, we kind of carry our values and live in this protected environment, and kind of freeze our cultures so that we want to keep that connectivity to our motherland. So now, as a parent myself, raising an 11-year-old daughter in the U.S., in California, I still put 2 braids to her, and she tells me that the rest of her classmates leave their hair down. Why are you doing this to me? And I said, well, that's how I grew up, and it keeps your hair out of your face, and you can focus on what you're learning in school instead of minding your hair all the time. So these are some of the values that I carry and instill in my own daughter as she's growing up. But in general, I would say, parenting is parenting, no matter where you do what you do. I try to be conscious about not introducing specific biases in one way or the other. Obviously there is environment, there are biases that kids are exposed to depending on where you live and where we are. Yeah, sometimes my daughter comes up to me and says, when she has to do her homework, she comes up and says she loves to help me cook. And I say, no, there is an entire life ahead of you where you can learn to cook. That's not that important for you right now. What you need to do right now is to learn, do your homework, and focus on your science project. So in some ways, I think I'm representing a privileged parent or a family, because I know that's not the case for many children who are in the lower strata of society. They have to drop out of schools to help out their parents earn money and living and help out with earning for the family. So again, I think my own experience and experiences are kind of, they represent one part of society. So I kind of mention them with that perspective, so that I'm not painting a broad brush. Yeah.
How different or how similar is it for you halfway across the world?
The Tritiya Upanishad says that Matru Deva Bhava, that is, mother is like God. So it's true for every Indian woman. She's the one who nurtures from home, and starting from transforms a girl child into taking up the education, guiding us all through. And my mother always used to say to me that there's only one life for you, and this is the real life wherein which you have to face the world, take risk, and show the potential of you, how you want to live your life. She has been always, we were 5 girls and 1 boy in the family. So she has given total, all of 6 of us were born and given the same education, and has been always encouraged by her that you should aim to achieve what you want to be. So this, any opportunity what is coming, all the opportunity you should take as a blessing. Challenges also to be taken as blessings, and that is the way you should look life and progress in life. That's when I talk about my mother, she is an inspiring model for me as far as my career, my life is concerned.
And I always say, there's a theory, and both of you spoke about your parents and especially your mothers and the role they've played. So I'm going to steer it a little bit towards mentorship because I honestly believe that often our first mentor comes from our home. For me, certainly, as the two of you, my mom was one of my first mentors. I may not have called it that, and it may not have been defined that directly as such, but when I look back, it's largely because of the path she walked and the experience she then imparted to me that I am where I am today. So keeping on the theme of mentors, what role has mentors, if any, played in your life? And particularly you spoke about women role models. So has there been any key women role models in your lives that have made a really significant difference, a turning point, a milestone? That's Rama, we can go start with you. Or Tessie,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I've read about in Tamil Nadu, Chinna Pillai, a woman with no education background, but she has turned the total village. It's about collecting 20 rupees from 10 women, started depositing, generating interest and work out of it, and she has turned a total village into a place where women were working. Women need not depend on others. I think people like them without a formal education background, but makes the difference. The total village has been changed. The money multiplied, the entrepreneurship coming out of a person of that value. I look at such women entrepreneurs, real role model. As far as scientific field is concerned, we have very many role models like Kalpana Chawla, we look at Chanda Kochar, all coming from a moderate family and climbing to their level of success. That's something I look upon, like doing their job with a dedicated mind and achieve things on their own. With a self-confidence, the amount of self-confidence and self-determination each individual women have shown is of great importance.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add from your side on mentorship?
Well, I think mentors play a huge role. I mean, as you rightly said, we all have our mothers as our mentors while we are growing up, and our siblings, sisters, brothers, from whom we learn. And we now have a fancy word called mentors in our corporate world, but and when I joined IBM, actually about 20 years ago, it was nothing like an official mentor or anything, but I was in IBM Research, and the premier research institute in the world, and I, for the first time, had the opportunity to see scientists and engineers, both men and women, who are highly accomplished. I mean, there are people who won Nobel Prizes, and a man who was sitting next to me who won National Academy of Science Award, and a woman who was my senior manager who was an IBM fellow and is a mathematician. And when you see such kind of role models, I was, regular engineer who just got started, and I was doing my programming, but I was so fortunate to be in such an environment where I'm exposed to all these, people, accomplished people. And subconsciously, I kind of started setting little goals. I say, well, I'm an engineer now. What does it take to become a project leader? What kind of skills do I need? Hey, by the way, she is a project leader. What does she do? Let me observe her when she does things in the project so that I can learn those skills. And when I got to a project leader, then I started thinking, I would like to be a manager perhaps. What does it take to become that? And lo and behold, there is a manager who is a woman or, or a man. It doesn't have to be from a woman always that you can learn. But, you have to be able to see those people and be able to interact with them. And that's what gives you the ability to kind of tell yourself that, yes, you can make it too, right? Gives you the confidence that they made it, and if I work hard, I can make it too. So I think for young girls, they need such role models. They need to be able to see people. Actually, in fact, I would say it's not role models just role models who are 20, 30 years older than them. That helps, of course, to set the goal. But when my daughter right now, who is in 6th grade, she cannot really relate to a Kalpana Chawla or, or Hillary Clinton, it's kind of too abstract for her. There are too many steps to get there, right? The role model that she needs is somebody who's in 8th grade, right? Who has done a wonderful science project and got an award. And she went through the same school that she went through, and she says, she did it. Why can't I do it, right? So kids need role models, but they need role models that, for every step, that kind of show them the path and the way that I can make it too. Because if you're, you put a 6-year-old girl with, a 40-year-old accomplished woman, you would have a very different conversation versus a 6-year-old girl, a 6th grader with an 8th grader, right? So they need role models with the appropriate, age-appropriate buddy kind of a role model. And another point I want to say is, and that needs to be a continuous process throughout their journey. It's not that you do this and they got a role model, and there has to be that connection where they're growing up together, and that person is always 2 or 3 steps ahead, and you are following along, or you're developing ideas on, or you're seeing enough of those people and say, okay, maybe I like that, I like to be like her, maybe this is the field that I want to get into. So they're getting exposed to enough of them at every step of the way, one step at a time.
And I think what I love about both your answers, for me it's not an either or, it's an and. Sometimes that role model is that woman that is someone you aspire to be, the woman in the village who you may have never met, but just knowing she did it. Sometimes it's the person, and that's what makes an enabling environment, right? You spoke about the colleagues you sat next to in your first job. There was no conversation that said, oh, you're going to be my role model, but just by being in that environment, the 6th grader is looking up to the 8th grader. We need a bit of both. And together, I think, especially as girls and women coming into this space, we should never undermine the role that plays. Having said that, of course, an advocate, each of us here and everybody in the room are advocates for getting more girls and women into STEM and just women in general achieving gender parity. But what I love the most about when I heard the theme of GES was, Women First, Prosperity for All, was that this was not just a side event. This was the main event, and we're talking about gender parity. Because I'm an avid believer that men have to be a part of this conversation. Too often we get into a room and it's just women talking, and we're talking about our women mentors and role models, which are very important. But the incomplete part of the conversation is that the role that men play in whether it's empowering, enabling, or getting more women to thrive in the industry. So what is your opinion about the role men play, whether they can, something they can or should be doing? And are there any experiences from your journeys where, I know as an engineer myself, every manager that I've had has been a man, and in fact one of my most powerful mentors who's made a difference in my life was a man. So what is maybe a personal journey or a personal story that you can share with that?
For me, I joined as a scientist under a director of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam.
Wow.
And he is one person, is a role model for our whole country, and not only country, beyond the whole globe, we can say. He is a person with great inspiration and openness, somebody who allows the scientists to share their knowledge. We as a junior scientist gets the forum to learn from the experts, and he is one person who allows, he individually makes you feel that you are a person of importance. So he values the scientific knowledge, or allows us to give the expertise in this field. That is how I as an individual, when I joined as an individual, as a junior scientist, I've given the total as a role model whom I can think from the scientific field is Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. And it's amazing. He is a person of very many qualities, like a mentor, he is a teacher, and at the age of 83, when he was talking to the IIM students at Shillong, he still was talking about learning and creating a world for the future of the students. And in his last minutes also, he was talking how to create, how to dream big about you and how to become a person who will enhance by education. That's what every moment of us, we have lot of interactions with him. He says, yes, you know what you have learned when we meet also, but you still have to learn more. He is one person who used to say that the capacity to learn is something, is a gift. Ability to learn is again a skill, and the willingness to learn, it is which has to come on your own. So he always encourages us to learn. Every field, every moment he says you have to become more knowledgeable. So that's what we all, as a scientist, is a journey. Day starts by learning, the day ends by learning. That's what we all are following.
Anything you want to add to that before we open it up to the audience for questions?
Well, I think, as they say, behind every successful man there is a woman, and the reverse holds true too. Men in our lives are so important. From my own personal experience, I say, my father, when I expressed the desire to go to the United States to study, not for once said no. I come from, again, a middle class family with savings that my father had put away. He not for once said, no, I don't have the money, or that you are a girl, don't go there all by yourself, or that there is nobody there. He just encouraged me. I said, you have a dream, go for it. And he took a bank loan and sent me to the US. And I wouldn't be who I am today if my father had not encouraged me and given me that support. And similarly, I would say, I lean on my husband a lot. I couldn't be, doing what I'm doing with my travel, with my career, if my husband wasn't there. Right now, he's there cooking, taking care of my 11-year-old daughter, braiding her and doing homeworks, working with her to prepare her for her tests and all that. And I couldn't be sitting here talking about my career or my experiences if he wasn't there taking care of my daughter. So, we need that ecosystem. We need family support. We are, none of the things that we do in our lives is done by a single person or ourselves alone. It's always the support of family, ecosystem, friends, colleagues, and even in my career, I don't take full credit for what I've achieved. And I've learned a lot of things from my colleagues, my peers, my mentors, my managers, and everybody that I interacted with. So it's a constant learning process, as Dr. Tessa said, and it's learn from everybody who gives good point of view and perspective. And I don't hesitate to lean on. We cannot do it all alone. There is no such a thing called superwoman, and that you can do it all. There are days when I leave the dishes on in the sink and I don't care about it because I have to take a 10 p.m. call, or I need to wake up early for a 5 a.m. call, and I give some to get some. So you rely on your network ecosystem and your family support. That's so important to be who you want to be.
Something I once heard was the most important career decision a woman will ever make is her choice in partner. So I think some of that is certainly true. So on that note, I would love to open it up to the audience, and we have some time for some questions for our panelists. If anybody would like to just raise your hand, and we have some volunteers who will approach you with the mic. So any questions? Can we have one over there? And if I could please ask you to just introduce yourself, what you do and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Tara. I've come from Chennai, and it's wonderful listening to you both. I'm not sure, because I'm as a scientist and you work in a development environment where by merits you grow up, right? But when I run a company and when I go for sales and marketing directly to meet with retailers, and many a times when I end up making a sale and come back to my friends, be it male or female, I tell them I made this sale, I'm so happy about it. They say, okay, you're a woman, you have that card. They just listen to you when you speak, and it's easy for you to get in. But when guys go pitch in, it's very hard for us to sell. I don't want that to happen. It's me who closed the deal. It's not the women. It's an individual who pitched my product. My product was good and they got it. So I get so pissed off when they say that. So what should I say to them? How do I, not convince. How would I get back to them and say that, no, it's me who did it?
Just say what you just
you
said.
said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
Okay.
it.
You need to say you are a manager who have done the job, not a woman.
Yeah.
You said it so eloquently. Just say that.
Okay,
That's
I'll
all
do
there
that.
is to it.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Just to add, it's often about owning our worth, right? So I sometimes feel that women, it's a no-win situation because in your case, when you made it, they're like, oh, you got it because you were a woman, or you got a seat on that board because you're a woman, or you got the job because they needed to, fill a quota. And when it suits the public, then, oh, it's because you're a woman, it's to your advantage. And on the flip side, when we don't get it, then being a woman works against us. Oh, you're a woman, you're not confident, you're not power driven, you're too nurturing, you're too emotional. So it's about finding the balance, and I think we as women in this space have to own it. And it's like you said, your work speaks for itself at the end of the day. I think in a male-dominated environment in the space we work in, I always tell my mentees as well, it's not about what you did, it's about your work has an excellent product. So when your business thrives, there are entrepreneurs who are failing on a daily basis, men, women, blue, pink, who cares?
Yeah.
Your business is thriving because of the work you've put into that. And no one can take that away from you.
Yeah, and if a venture capitalist invests in your company, no venture capitalist is investing in it because you're a woman. I mean, they're in it for money, and that's what they should be. That's what their business is. So if they invested in you, that's because you have a great idea, and they believe that you are the right candidate to carry that idea forward. And you just take credit for it.
Yeah. We have one over there, and we'll come to the front. So we'll do one. There's a mic there, then we'll come to the front, the two ladies in the front afterwards.
Hi, my name is Ardra, and I'm the founder and managing director of Eka Biochemicals, which is the first fully women-owned biotech company in environmental science in India. Thank you. So that's sort of a question that arose when you answered her question, is that, gender should not matter at the end of the day. But when I introduced my company as the first fully women-owned biotech company in India in its space, I am playing the gender card. But I'm proud to play the gender card because this is something that I'm proud of having achieved, and I have it's a small company, but I have an all-women scientific team, and we really try to bring back. I'm from Kerala, by the way, so we have a very high rate of literacy in women in STEM, but something that I've observed is that it does not translate to women working in STEM. So we have a lot, and I do mean many, women who hold BScs, MScs, and PhDs who are unable to contribute out of their own choice or out of factors that have influenced their lives. And we try to make sure that in biotech, if there is a woman scientist who wants to come back into the workforce, we try to take them on. So when we do that, is that playing the gender card? Is that, how do you position yourself so that it does not become gender bias, but at the same time you are empowering women? That would be my question.
See, science doesn't know what you are doing, right? So be it biotechnology, any field you take, once you are determined to work in that field, nobody can stop you, that you are an example. So I prefer to be addressed as a scientist than as a women scientist. So that's the feeling. At par working with men and women together, as a team we work and do. As far as you are doing you're sincere to yourself and your own intuition, you have to do an intuitive work of decision making, self-motivated. That makes the difference. If somebody is guiding you, the journey is different. So if you are empowered by yourself, empowerment means you have to know the technology knowledge base, and then everything else falls in place in steps, and your own self motivation, self confidence, what makes the difference. You can be a leading entrepreneur in your field.
Also, just very briefly on that note, so there's a big difference between a differentiating factor and the gender card. So to the question we answered before, if you're going and you're pitching for the seat on the board because I'm a woman, that's playing the gender card. As an entrepreneur myself, when you go to an investor, the first thing they want to know is, what are you doing differently? It just so happens that what you're doing differently is the fact that you're the first women-owned biotech company and that your employer base is largely women. That, in my opinion at least, is not the gender card, it's your differentiating factor.
Right, thank you. And just as a follow-up
Actually,
question.
may I ask, why do you introduce yourself as a first women scientist-led biotech company?
We actually found out because we got press attention that we were the first fully women-owned biotech company in India. And we're in environmental biotech, so it's a very niche area, and that is still the tag that, you know, that sort of precedes us. And I do try to tell them that I'm in environmental biotech, and you know, I explain it first, but they immediately come back to me and they're like, oh, you're that company. So it just, I find it easier to get it out of the way first and then tell them about my work so that, you know, it doesn't become sort of the elephant in the room at times. And just as a follow-up question, if you don't mind, I find that helping women in STEM is something that really needs a lot of attention. I'd love to have your take on that as well, please.
Yeah, you know, that is so true. You know, this past August, I was here visiting my family. My mother, who is sitting here, has a maid. And it's a very typical story of maid's family. Maid's name is Padma. She has an abusive husband who is an alcoholic, doesn't contribute to anything at all. And Padma has 3 children, 3 girls. Perhaps she waited for a boy child, and that's why she ended up with 3 girls, not sure. But she has 3 girls, and each of them are in different schools studying, and mom is trying to make both ends meet. She works in 5 different houses and takes the beatings of her husband at night time, and whatever saves up, she's sending her 3 children, girls, to school. And I happened to actually, mom asked those 3 girls to come to say hello to me. I happened to meet the older girl, who is about the same age as my daughter. And that girl goes to a public school, and she's such a smart girl. When my mom said that I live in the United States, she started speaking to me in English. She said, oh, how are you? Where do you live? And actually, I could not imagine me speaking in English at that age, going to a pretty good school. And she was going to a public school, probably from noon to evening. Such an intelligent kid. So I saw the potential and said, this girl could become an engineer or a doctor, whatever she chooses to be. She needs to be in a better school and a better environment. And thankfully, I'm fortunate enough and earning enough to be able to, and in dollars, so I have the ability to help the 3 little girls of my mom's maid to send them to school. So the thing that I immediately did after I went back is, with my sister's help, my mom's help, got those 3 girls put in a good school. Now those 3 girls are in an English medium school. You could argue about English versus Telugu debate and all that, but the main point is that, women in STEM needs to identify and help. Whoever you can help, you have to be able to, take that opportunity and help. And, that girl now actually calls me, or whenever I call her, she's so grateful. She tells me, gives me updates on what she's studying and learning, and I see the potential. She could be an engineer, she could be a doctor, whoever she wants to be. And her 2 little children 2 little sisters can do that too. So, all of us here, we need to pull up girls, or boys, whoever. I mean, I don't specifically want to discriminate girls or boys, but underprivileged children If we can support anything we can do, education is the way, education is the means to get them out of that rut that they're in. And if we can do that and be a role model, I intend to follow this through all the way to however far they want to go in their studies. And one child at a time like that, if we can make a difference, the world will be a better place. And again, I won't say this specifically for girls, children alone. There are many boy children who are underprivileged and going through the same kind of problems. And that's what all of us need to do. And whoever can help, please, and I would say, help, get them educated. Education is the way to get out of the rut that they're in.
Thank you. We had a question up front here. Okay, and start there, and then we'll move here, and then we'll come to the front over here.
Hi, everybody. Rama, Mr. Rama, I want to say you are wrong at the very beginning. You said you didn't have any inspiring story by yourself, but you are simply standing out to saying I am now working in this company as a scientist. It's already very inspiring by yourself. Oh, so I would like to say, I really hope every girl, woman who has been in this field, it doesn't necessarily have to be a very awesome, great scientist, but we just stand out to say, you see, I'm doing that. So it's already very inspiring for everybody. So thank you so much. Okay, my name is Jenny Jinshkazu. I'm from Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, 2 countries from Central Asia. In Kyrgyzstan, I'm working as the chairman of Association of Social Entrepreneurs, helping actually our women entrepreneurs and so on. In Kazakhstan, I'm leading the largest education company in the country. Yes, so we are doing online education, and we had a very pleasure talk about the online educations. So I have one comment, one question, one suggestion. I'm sure it's gonna be under 2 minutes, very quick. Okay. One comment, we talk a lot about the gender equality, stereotype things. But when I go to my regions in Kyrgyzstan, I heard a girl told me Jenny, you know what? Because from my childhood time, I always thought girls are smarter than boys. I said, how come? Because usually boys, they have to help their family. They're very busy outside. They don't really visit the school quite often. Only girls left in the classroom. So she always thought girls much smarter than boys, So I just want to tell you, there's really no differentiation of the learning capacity. It is all the stereotype is formulated by our society and by our environment by ourselves. But now why we are saying women are less present in STEM, less present in the career, it is just because of our larger environment, our public, this information in the media. So I do think every single person, man and woman, we can be the advocate. So it's not speaker talking we need to do that. So each one of us, we have the responsibility to advocate for this. I have a TED talk actually about this. It is not a women's issue. It is man's issue. It is our society's issue. Okay, I just close it up. My question is, another very significant phenomenon in Central Asia, I believe in India the same. So after girls graduated from this mandatory education, high school, going to the question if she should continue the education. So in my country, practice is like this. Except that middle class, if girls get state sponsorship, if she's graduated very well, she will get a state a scholarship. Then she go to study. If not, then our parents tell her you'd better get married. So this is kind of the lack of the access to the financial and capital. So they retain a lot of girls after the high school. They choose either get a scholarship or either to get married. So this is the thing what I'm thinking to help them to open. My question is, since Tessie, you are in your own academic world, and Rama, you are in IBM, is there any platforms so for encouraging the women in terms of financial capitals and in terms of knowledge sharings? The last suggestion, I'm the educator because we offer education company. Science, from childhood, I'm always interested in science. But for me, for majority, they think science is something very complicated. It is so far away. At least you become a scientist, then you will get engaged in science. And I hope it is not in the formal education. Is there a way to just provide this usual people, persons who are interested in science, it's kind of, it's not limited in the school system, but it can be a daily learning. You can go to the website, go to the online education to learn about STEM. So if you have this kind of good recommendations for this kind of learning platform, it will be great. Thank you.
Our Indian government has taken up education programs like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Then we have Science India programs, wherein which the scientists are, as a mentor, go into college level, school level, give inspirational interactions. So they learn, and we are available for the students to interact and get the knowledge shared. Then like Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan by the Ministry of HR, and very recently Prime Minister his own program called the Mudra, wherein which girls are given educational loans if they need, and I myself is a person who have taken education loan as an engineering student, and then did my engineering total science career. So it's again a support what we need from the community or the group where we are, and the girls can get guided to take their own decision in their career. Once we give them, today it's a world of smart revolution. If you think about each and everything is available because of the Internet of Things and all the smartphones and the web available, computer field, the information technology. You need to only tap those opportunity to learn and become what you are. So there's a lot of governmental initiatives to support the women and the girl child to come up in their career as science and technology is concerned.
At the beginning of the session, we asked in the room how many people are working towards or have an organization initiative getting and encouraging and nurturing more girls in STEM. A couple of hands went up, so my suggestion would be definitely network around the room. I think there are a lot of people working in that space. Okay, we had one more question there. We have a question here up front, and then we're going to come there. Depending on time, we may take one more.
Hi, my name is Christy. Hello. I work for a company called Simprints, and we build mobile biometrics for last mile service delivery in healthcare, education, finance. It's a full stack hardware, firmware, software. I'm not actually in STEM myself. I've been hired by the company in order to strategically scale our operations, and part of that is building out our employee base from 10 to 25. Right now our tech team is 3 men, and I'm working hard to try to revamp our hiring process such that we receive more female applicants. We just want the best computer science engineers, whether that's men, women, whomever. However, only 10% of our applicants are females. And I'm doing everything I can in terms of rewriting our job specs for gender neutral wording and posting on the right job boards. But I was wondering, we're based in the United Kingdom. I was wondering if you have any suggestions in terms of hiring more women in this space, in this field, without playing the gender card too much. If that makes sense.
This is a big problem in every company these days. The reason why you don't get enough women engineers to hire is because there aren't enough of them in the pipeline, right? It's as simple as that. And I mean, there are other reasons. Even people who are in STEM fields have to drop out because of various reasons, to raise a family or to take care of an ailing parent. There are other family reasons for which they may not be available, but the biggest reason is that there are not enough in the pipeline. So unfortunately, there is no quick answer and a silver bullet solution right now. If you're not getting enough good resumes, that's because maybe there aren't enough women graduating from great schools with those kinds of fields. I mean, there are specific women networks that you can probably tap into if your goal is to hire more women. But in general, I think as society, we need to do more to increase the pipeline, the women in the pipeline, so that more and more will come out of that pipeline. And for that to happen, all these things around role models, mentoring, and giving them the financial opportunities and the assistance that they need, and the ecosystem. So it's a complex set of things that have to come together to build that pipeline. But we cannot not act just because it's complex. I think Ivanka Trump was saying that in her plenary speech, which she put it very well, that if we don't if only we could tap into the potential of women in the workforce, world's GDP would, double, triple kind of a thing. And India's own GDP could double, triple if we could get, so it's hard work. It takes a lot of, many things that have to come together, public policy, parents, education systems, good educational institutions, all those things have to come together. But companies are also realizing this, that it's not just about doing this for public good to improve their brand. It's also, they need this workforce, women workforce for 10, 15 years from now, for that company to be viable and to have the diversity of thought and to be able to make products for women, because women are consumers too, right? So it's just good business. It's not just for some kind of public good. It's also for for your future business that you need to invest. And so companies are starting to do this with Girls Who Code type of programs and encourage more and more girls in middle schools and high schools. That's where they drop out. And the problems are somewhat different in different economies. In India, girls drop out when they reach puberty because of there are no bathrooms, there are not enough supplies for them, and all of those kind of things. And girls in educated societies like United States drop out or pursue non-STEM careers because there aren't enough role models for them, or they're considered to be too geeky. And I have to tell you this story. Whenever, for any sports event that happens, I see women cheerleaders. That puts me off. I don't know why girls have to cheer for when men are, whoever is playing. Why couldn't they be the ones who are actually doing that sport? Why? Those are the kind of stereotypes where even in advanced societies or well-educated so-called economies, that these are unspoken type of biases that are still perpetuating. We have to break those kind of barriers, and we have to set role models, good examples, and build up the pipeline. And it's a process. It's a lot of hard work. It will take, there is no silver bullet. It will take several decades of hard work, but it is possible. Women didn't have the right to vote. Women didn't have many rights, but we've come a long way. I mean, the situation is not so dire and pessimistic. We've come a long way, and we have a long ways to go. But if we work together and really kind of bring all these institutions together, companies, public policy, governmental agencies, educational institutes, nonprofits, organizations, everybody working toward that cause, I think we can make it happen in a few decades from now.
We've got time for one last question before we close the session.
Thank you so much for giving men an opportunity. Yeah. I write for the India Today group. I'm from Business Today. So I'm happy there's media representation here as well. My question actually, three quick parts. One is that both are from well-known organizations who have a huge history. You're from a leading public sector organization. You're from IBM, which has a huge history. From the time you joined, about 20 years or so, many years really. So how have you seen the organization change when it comes to actually women? Second bit is in terms of the challenges. The challenges when you joined were very different from the challenges today. I mean, there are many people wanting this career, but what do you see as the key challenges in your field? And third bit, because of your seniority and the level of competency and the stature that you've achieved, what are you doing as mentors? Tell us a bit about your teams really, how you're trying to mentor them. 3 points. Thanks.
And I'm going to challenge you to each answer that quite quickly, and including in that, just add your closing remarks, because I think that quite nicely wraps up the conversation from your side.
Okay. Today's Indian scenario, we are with a lot of constraints, starting with the mindset, the decision-making capability, the support we get from the family, the mentorship, role models, the safety. When you look to the Indian culture, we are very, very scared whether to send a girl child for an engineering away from the home, going and staying. These are the constraints which the environment in which the girl is brought up. So when I joined for engineering also, I was born in Nalapi. I had to travel at least 5 hours to reach the engineering college. Definitely there is the heart of mother and father, they used to feel whether I am safe in traveling. So those were the constraints, the mindset. As a girl, she comes as an engineer, what she will be able to do, cope up with life. These are the earlier when I joined as thing. Today, it is not like that. Today is, as I said, is a smart world. You are able to connect with, the networking is so much, and the fear factor from most of the girls in the school have vanished, because we are nurturing them, we are giving the educational input, and today's science and the technology is allowing them to get an upper hand of living their life of their own option. And second question is how we go, I mean, as a scientist, we are encouraged to go to the school, college level and give an interactive talks on technical talks as well as scientific, as well as motivators, how the journey through which we have undergone and we have come up in life, like, which sets an example that is, of course, you have to have a dedicated mind to learn, and this is what is going to make changes in you, and you will be able to be a winner. This is what does we propagate. And today is a world of knowledge. In if you have a computer, you get to know many things, as when we were not. I joined as an scientist in the missile field. While doing engineering, hardly knows about what missile and what to do. But it's again the experience, the learning curve, what we have gone through. But today's generation has a upper hand, and they can decide in the school, college level itself. Their talents can be tapped and can be guided to the next scientific science and STEM, especially in the STEM side. So it is a fear in the mind of the generation that science and technology is something which women cannot reach through, but it's not so. And DRDO has proven that many of the scientists, top senior scientists, are represented by women.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you know, IBM is one of the first companies where they had in 1950s or 60s women vice presidents. So there's a very strong culture of gender equality and encouraging women to pursue career paths, be it management and technical careers. So I mean, I'm fortunate to be working for a company that is such a leading edge company that offers wonderful opportunities for women to grow and pursue their careers. But it's not always that. Even today, you know, you must have read in news about Uber's culture, right? How toxic and how anti-women the culture is. So culture really matters, and you know, things could go horribly wrong. Even in this day and age, with so much awareness of gender equality and women empowerment and all that, there are companies like that, and you know, they're trying to fix the mess. But it's shocking to know that such things happen today. So yeah, I mean, organizations, companies, schools, institutions, everybody has to pay attention to what kind of biases they're introducing, and to create an environment that you know, you don't have to go out of the way to create extra opportunities, but don't discriminate, at least, right? Give them equal opportunity and let their intellectual capacity play out. And if they're good, they'll reach the heights. If they're not, they'll be who they want to be, but at least they have a fair chance. That's what matters. And to sum up in the end, I would say that you know, to have more women and girls in STEM fields, a few things that I want to highlight from my own experience. First thing is role models, very important. I've already talked about it. Mentoring, continued ongoing mentoring. They have to be able to have a relationship from their childhood all the way through their careers. Then they have to show up. That's very important. You know, I almost didn't come to this conference. You know, I'd like to think that I'm, you know, very aware of the biases and all that and so on, but when I got an email saying that, you're invited to this GES conference, I thought from the White House you'll get an invitation. I said, yeah, right, what, who, this must be a spam. I put that aside. I got a second email. I was too busy with my work. And I said, oh, this must be, these guys are, these spam guys are really persistent. Put that aside. Third time, somebody called me and I said, well, I'm too busy. I just have been to India. I don't want to go to India now. I'm not coming. I went back home and told my husband that I got some invitation from something called Global Entrepreneur Summit. I don't know if this is really, a genuine one or not. And he said, are you kidding me? It's the in thing that's happening in Hyderabad. Prime Minister is going and Ivanka Trump is going and you got an invitation. You should go. That's when I actually took the time to go look up what this GES Global Entrepreneur Summit was. And I said, okay, it seems like a big deal, so I'll go. And I showed up, right? I'm glad I showed up because I got this opportunity to meet so many wonderful people, entrepreneurs, and I got to learn about so many things. Showing up is so important, and everybody has to do that. Go do the networking, introduce yourself to people, tell them about what you're doing. Show up, so important. And finally, support system and encouragement. It's an absolute must. You cannot do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. You have to lean in on your family, your friends, and take the support. And if all of these things come together, hopefully in a few decades from now, we can really fill the pipeline of STEM. You won't have the problem of hiring your engineers, and there will be somebody over there don't have to play a gender card. Just go by merit. And I hope that's where we'll end up a few decades from now.
Well, Rama, we're certainly glad you showed up because not only did you get to meet everybody, but everybody got to meet you too. So on that note, I really want to thank you and Dr. Chessie, for being here, sharing your stories. Again, to reiterate what the lady in front said, both of you have such inspiring stories. And it's really around how do we take these inspiring stories and start making them more real. A couple of key themes that came up repeatedly through the session was, as you mentioned as well, mentors and role models. How do we have more of them not just sharing their stories, but proactively playing the role in getting more girls into the pipeline? Addressing the issue of unconscious bias, very real for both men and women, and the perceptions we have of where they play in various spaces. Certainly culture matters, both with culture within organizations, but also the cultural aspect of the social narrative of the role of women in society that we need to change. And of course, last but certainly not least, is around breaking stereotypes. There are so many different things around stereotypes that really need to just be completely shattered. And on that note, you may have noticed the pink heart up here, and part of that is part of Women's. It's a campaign that we launched in March over the next 10 years where we're committing to reach 1 million girls in STEM. It's just about creating awareness. And a way in which we're doing that is, fighting a stereotype with a stereotype. So the hard hat, which is typically a stereotypically male, the grease monkey in the hard hat and overall that I spoke of, and of course the overly cliched pink that represents girls. Take them together and show that just because a hard hat is pink, it doesn't make it any less strong, any less effective. It does the job just as well. So a symbol like that coming to reality through the women who are up here and the journey that we're all taking together. This is not going to happen overnight, but we're certainly further than we were 10 years ago, and in 10 years' time, hopefully, going to be much further ahead. So thank you to each of you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Hema, for moderating the panel so well.
Thank you, and hopefully there's some meaningful takeaways.